Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of Rock M Radio. I'm your host, Sam Snelling, for another episode of Dive Cuts. I know it's kind of been a while. It's been a couple weeks. Season has started. We're not doing dive cuts. What's going on? Life gets in the way sometimes. So we're back, and hopefully this means that we're going to kind of be getting back into the regular scheme of things, going weekly more often. Again, Sam Snelling, if you're watching us on YouTube, you're watching us live. We are live. It is Sunday, about 4:40 p.m. Central Time, and I am on the left side of your screen. On the right side of the screen, everybody's favorite co-host, Matthew J. Harris. Matt, how are you?
I'm well. It's been a couple of weeks, but Matt Watkins has done a noble job with the verdict, filling in, giving everyone data, film, all manner of minutia. So he's covered for us. That's just how I think about it. We've given him room to establish a toehold with an audience. That's what we've done. We've been gracious in our absence. That's the way I look at it. But otherwise, I'm fine. And we will get back in the swing of things. We hope.
Yeah. Well, so the good news about kind of taking a little extra time to sort of watch this team is we've sort of seen, 4 full games. Missouri is now 3-1. Their Ken Pom rating dipped, and it is now back up. So they're right about where they started the season, which is just on the downside of 50. And we were kind of talking a little bit beforehand, like we can kind of get into the minutia of what we've seen, but overall, like this looks about like we thought this team would look. Like there's been things that maybe you didn't expect. We can talk about that. Things that you did expect. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But overall, they're about where we thought they would be. Like, we thought they could beat Memphis. But it was still going to be, it's always tough to, open the season on a road in quad one game. Memphis has since looked better and better. So it's very possible that loss holds up as far as, being a Q1. They've had some bumps, and then, the non-con, they've won all their games, but overall, like no complaints. I certainly wish Howard didn't, go wild from 3-point range. I wish, maybe they played a little cleaner against Eastern Washington. But all things being considered, Matt, solid start.
Yeah, I went back through lineup data, went back through, all kind of the study hall data we do, and you can get bogged down in, oh man, the offense didn't look great. The base offense didn't look great against Memphis, and they kind of stalled out, and it was a tale of two halves, and they didn't play well there. Or you can get bogged down in, they should have been engaged against Eastern Washington. A lot of the errors in that game, I almost chalk up to disengagement or a lack of focus as much as anything. Eastern Washington was doing, even if Eastern Washington was a really good ball movement and cutting team. A lot of errors when you go back and watch that are just come down to guys not being locked in, not communicating. But there's plenty of teams around the country who I think if you tuned in, to any high major team, you're going to find one clunker where they're not engaged, or there's going to be a game where they have two wildly different halves depending on who they're playing. Like we're probably going to see that today against even Mississippi State. They didn't play great in the first half, but it looks like they're playing well in the second. So it happens. I think the biggest thing that I come back to is, the guys who we expected to play a lot are playing a lot. The way they're playing, if you look at kind of the play call data, is what we would have expected, given the guys who play a lot. And in aggregate, if you look at the possession data, it's about what you would expect given the schedule. And I know that that's, kind of boring. And, we people come here kind of maybe looking for insights, but I think you almost want it to be boring at this point. I think it would last year after 3 or 4 games, we were sitting here going, I don't quite know what this team is. Caleb's off to a slow start. We haven't seen Tanji. I'm not sure what the lineups are that, Nick's kind of having to do more than we thought. There were things last year I felt that there 4 or 5 games where we were like, yeah, this isn't quite what we would have expected. This one has been in aggregate pretty much what I would have expected. And if we came into this year thinking this could be a bubble or a tournament team, that's a good thing. It's still early, 10% of the way through the season, but if they're looking like we expect, and if the expectation is that they're going to be competing for something, or competing for a spot in the field of 68, that's a good thing that they're on track at this point, and there's still time for them over the next 3, I think, to find a rhythm and maybe accelerate that process a little bit. So I think that's important. They haven't regressed, and I think they're in a position to where if they can use the next 2 weeks as a springboard, they could be in really, really good position when they get to early December.
Yeah, I just as you and I are also want to do, I keep a pretty close eye on what the rest of the conference is doing. I tend to expect that we worry a lot about the non-conference schedule. I think a lot of fans in general, talk a lot about non-conference schedule, but a lot of this is going to come down to how you play in conference and sort of what your opponents are doing. And I don't know that there's been a whole lot of surprises, but maybe LSU has looked a little better than we expected. Certainly they've gone from, I think they were about 59th in the preseason.
Yeah.
They went on the road and beat Kansas State, which is good for them. So they're at 40 in KenPom. Vanderbilt sunk a little bit, but not far. They went from, I think, 77 to 89. South Carolina slipped quite a bit. They're down to 71. Georgia is right about where they were to start the season. I want to say they were 62. They're at 66.
Georgia was 65th or 66th. They've moved one spot.
Okay. So I think I was thinking of the aggregate number that I had for them. So for anybody that read all the previews, I averaged with some weight. KenPom had the most weight. All the analytics site to kind of give us an idea. So Ole Miss, they're down to 50. Oklahoma's sunk a little bit. They're down to 49. Arkansas is about the same at 31. Mississippi State is dipped, I believe, to 27, but that's like a couple spots.
Yeah.
Texas has slipped a little bit. They're down to 24. Kentucky, they've gone up. Kentucky certainly looked really good. Not totally surprised by that, having a very experienced roster and a lot of money to spend. A&M is actually kind of surprised that they're even with their road loss to UCF.
They kind of held steady.
They recovered from that. Alabama is up a little bit, actually. I think they, even in preseason KenPom, weren't they in like the upper teens?
No, they were fourth in KenPom to start the year.
Okay, so
they're down to 10th in KenPom, but they haven't really like moved. I think the big thing, I track KenPom every 3 or 4 days and put it in. Like, I'll put it this way: the average starting position for SEC teams on November 4 was 37.2. It's 37.1 right now. Like, the league had a bumpy first week and then spent the last 2 weeks recovering. Everybody's usually moved within 5 to 6 spots, which happens because that's just what happens in non-con teams play each other, early results. So as a league, like, everybody kind of looks the same. Like, maybe South Carolina has surprised us because South Carolina took a loss on opening night to North Florida. They didn't look great in the second half yesterday. But there have been teams that have struggled, like Ole Miss struggled against a SWAC team. Georgia struggled against an Atlantic Sun team. There are teams up.
And here's one thing I'll add about Ole Miss. Ole Miss has struggled more than I think a lot of people expected. Where they've struggled has been more offensively, which I think is one of the things we did not expect. I think we
Right.
expected that team to be a pretty good offensive team and maybe questionable defensively, and it's sort of been the other way around. They've been pretty good defensively.
I think anybody outside the top one in this conference, you could probably go up and down and find a little bit of a clunker for them early here.
Yeah.
So it's been what this means in relation to Missouri is I don't think the league has really started moving yet. Everybody's played one or two quad one games. Everyone's looked about like the models have expected them to look in those quad one games, aside from maybe like Kentucky knocking off Duke, which is probably the marquee win for the league so far, or Auburn going into Houston and getting a win. Those are two big wins for the league. But, those are two teams that, I think on neutralish floors, you would have expected maybe those results aren't that surprising. So for Missouri to be kind of in that position where they're like the rest of the league looking about like we expected, I think it's going to put an imperative on them, come December, when the games really ratchet up. I think Missouri fans are probably going to expect them to do well over the next 2 weeks. Cal will be interesting because Cal got slapped around at Vanderbilt this week, and Cal has looked a little questionable at times in their quad 4 games and separated late. So if Cal comes in and Cal is closer to like a number 150 team in the ratings, you'd expect Missouri maybe to come out of those games at 7-1, which is what we would have expected from them. They'll probably be in around the number 50 mark in KenPom. What we're saying is this team may be what the models have forecasted. The real stakes are a couple weeks away. Can they use this week and next week to sharpen their edge? And I think this is where we can maybe talk about what we saw on Friday night. Can they translate what they did against Mississippi Valley State, where very much the goal was to come out, attack, finish that team early, play on the break, play an early clock, and put that team away early? Can that carry over to a team like Pacific? Can it carry over to UAPB? Can it carry over to Lindenwood? Because if you get blowouts in those games, crass as it sounds, if they juice the margins in those games, then you'll start to see some movement in the ratings. But more importantly, I think you want to see this team become one that starts fast, that gets out, gets off quickly, doesn't take its time to really settle in. You want to see them be sharp and, pretty bright early. They were that on Friday night, even given how bad Mississippi Valley State is. Missouri put them away in the first 8 minutes. It was done in the first 8. And, I think what stood out in the second half of that game too was poor Mississippi Valley State put its head up for like a 6-3 run. Dennis swapped in some starters and they ripped off a 17-2 spurt. Like, it was just like, stay down. They did not hesitate. I thought, they're going to maybe leak a little bit in garbage time. Nope. No. Dennis reinserted some starters in a 17-2 run, put that down. So I think that's kind of, we've kind of milled around and saying they've looked how we expected. We'd been saying, would they start fast? Would you start to see this team finish teams off? That's what they did Friday night. Can that be the new standard over the next 2 weeks for them to really find that, finishing edge with Cal coming in? Because I think that's what you want to see. They've looked how we've expected. Do they have another gear they can find in the next 2 weeks? Because then you might have a team that can really, really be special if they're just figuring out what they can do. Or was Friday night just a case of the worst team in Division I showed up and it happened to be a good night for Missouri? We'll see. But that's the encouraging thing, is they put that team down pretty quickly.
Well, and I think like that's kind of what, one of the things that I was trying to focus on when I was writing study hall on that game in particular. Like basic takeaways were of the 4 games is, frustration for how they played offensively in the second half against Memphis. I actually pulled out of that also that aside from a really good run that was steered by Trent Pierce and Naden Shaw, in the first half, like they didn't really play all that well the entire game.
Yeah.
So it's worth pointing that out. Like as much as we maybe didn't enjoy the first or the second half, like the first half was not great outside of Trent Pierce and Aiden Shaw just having a little bit of a run. The second game, like I look, they played great defensively. They shot the ball poorly from three, and Howard shot the ball great from three, and that was really
that should have been a 30-point win.
Yeah, but I thought they played really well.
They did.
If they shoot, like 35-40%, like that, it is a 30-point win. But that's sort of how it goes. And then being critical of them, I thought that their defensive intensity against Eastern Washington was poor. So it was nice to sort of see, and again, like I understand that Mississippi Valley State is the worst team in Division I. However, like you're supposed to take teams like that and put them away. Maybe you don't need to beat them by 72, but I almost think there was a little bit of a, Dennis trying to kind of make a statement and saying, like, for much of the last couple of years, like I've had teams that don't step on your neck.
Yeah.
And I want a team that steps on your neck. And I really kind of feel like that was him kind of driving home a message. Like, this is how we're going to play. We're going to rotate guys in. I want a deep rotation. I want to play 10, 11 guys, and we are going to attack. So I thought that was heartening because it's something that we haven't really seen. I hope this is part of the progression of this team and what they're going to be, and also to do it, really with a guy who I think we are all kind of expecting to be maybe their best player, and Tony Perkins. It's healthy to get, make sure that Ant Robinson is getting in there, getting Marquez Warwick some of those minutes at the point guard as well, and really being physically dominant. So. Rough takeaways from each of the four games.
Yeah. The emphasis was clearly get out and push on Friday night. I think they had 5 defensive to offensive situations and 13 early clock possessions in the first half. I mean, garbage time was at halftime. I mean, the entire second half was garbage time. If you hand calculator, you look at Evan Maya's models, the first half was all that really mattered in that game. Missouri played in transition 20 possessions in that first half. Like, they didn't run a base offensive possession in their man-to-man stuff until 6 minutes left in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was either grab and go, push, live ball turnovers, or there were 7 possessions of zone in there by Mississippi Valley State, and Mississippi Valley State quickly got out of that and then decided for some reason to play man. And that went poorly too. About everything went poorly for them. But 2/3 of Missouri's offense in the first half, I didn't have many notes to take watching because it was like grab, go. Okay, they're getting out. They're filling wide runners to the corners, 5 out spacing, look for the trailer, play off the first dribble, kick, shoot, 3. Like they were, It was base transition offense for him. But you could see like Dennis doing little gestures back at the half court line, like go. Like, I think that's what the entire premise was. It's not just we're going to step on their neck. We're going to go and do it full bore. And we're absolutely going to run them down, which not very sportsmanlike, but if you want to send a message to your guys that, hey, 40 minutes of absolute no let up, they gave you a data point that they could do it. Now the question is, can they put another one together? Can they do that to Pacific on Friday night, which will be an interesting game? I think that's more interesting than what UAPB will offer, but can they start to make that pretty routine where they come out and they just go and they get at you early? That, like you were saying, that depth hits you, they start to roll bodies, and it just becomes a cumulative effect. Can they get that going routinely? Because I think you're right. That's what Dennis wants, and we'll see if they can supply it to him with a little bit more consistency.
Yeah. Matt Watkins had his most recent the verdict. It's available for subscribers on the Rockin' Plus forums now. Mostly talking about Ant Robinson, who I think has been one of the early standouts as far as maybe guys you didn't fully expect to be playing such a center role. I see you pumping your fist. Matt
procured a lot of Ant Robinson stock in June.
You were the first to sort of talk a lot about Ant. I think a lot of people saw Ant last year and were surprised by how ready he was to sort of play at this level. He is clearly, taken another step forward. I mean, there's several frustrating moments, particularly in the Eastern Washington game for me, where it's like, okay, maybe he's getting a little ahead of himself on some of the growth arcs. But
the early block stuff was questionable.
Yeah, like what was the one-footed fadeaway in the lane?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe think of like the Pat Ewing video clip where he's like, you practiced that shot. I have seen you practice that shot. You practiced that one-legged fadeaway?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody, you could search the web. I'm sure that Pat Ewing quote from when he was coaching at Georgetown. It's quite excellent, but that kind of made me think of that when Ant was fading away off one leg in the lane. Other than that, like who stood out for you early?
I think Aiden Shaw. I think Watkins and I had sort of this discussion, but it was almost like more theoretical than anything else of like, okay, they went and they got 2 big fives. And that's good. But one of them has never played more than like 14 minutes a game. The other one is improving his conditioning, but is he going to be conditioned enough to give you more than 15 minutes? And is Dennis really, with the kind of pace he wants to play with, going to play traditional fives 30 minutes a night?
Yeah.
We just didn't know if that was, we thought, given what we saw from Aiden last year, where he played more like a 5, like there was a pathway for him to sort of grow into a small ball 5. We just didn't know whether that would be a route that they would want to travel. And so far he's, playing, I think probably equal or slightly more minutes at the 5 than Josh Gray is. They have tried him and Mark as small ball 5s and really rotated different 4 men alongside them. So I think that's been interesting to me, is that, they have found a way, to get, Aiden involved as that small ball 5. And really realistically, when you watch them play, some of their best runs of play have been with going small. Now, the question is, can you find some more consistent offensive efficiency in the half court that way? They tend to wind up playing a bit more early clock, a bit more on the break with those lineups, but that's what you want. You want them to play fast and get out and use their athleticism. They're trying some stuff, I think, in the half court. I'm not sure if I'll write about it yet, but they're trying different stuff, I think, to make those combinations work. But, to see Aiden Shaw, play 40% of minutes, his usage is still only 12.7%. We got to get that up. Got to get that up to 17. But, he's, I think, doing what we would have expected here, which is he's, allowing them to shrink, play with a little bit more tempo. So I think that's been good to see. We'll see how long that lasts once the schedule toughens up. But I think that's been sort of surprising to me. I thought Ant would make it.
He's made 2 threes. He had only attempted 2 threes last year. And he's already made an attempted 2 this. He's 2 for 2. I don't know. Like, I'd be happy with an Aiden make every, second game, basically. Like, I feel like that's.
I mean, he's averaging basically 3 or 4 shot attempts per game. A lot of them at the rim. He's doing a good job, as a switchable defender. Teams have targeted him in ball screens a little bit, and you'd like to see him be a little bit better on the ball, move his feet, stay down with some dribblers. Eastern Washington kind of targeted him a little bit, but he's so active. He's great as a help side defender. He can be a switchable guy for you. If he's getting 4 or 5 shots a game and a lot of them at the rim and converting, that's fine. But he's trying push shots. He's trying jumpers. He's putting the ball on the deck. Would I like to see it again? You're 17%, yes, but the early composition of what he's doing with his touches is better. And I think he's allowing them to sort of shrink their personnel and play the way I think that fits this team a little bit better so far. So I think that's been good. You waxed poetic about Ant. I think just watching him play more aggressively off the bounce, like he's playing direct to the rim this year and not like falling away, not changing his body angles, not complicating finishing packages. He's just going direct to the rim now. Like, and he's not, he hasn't bulked up completely, but he looks stronger through his core. He looks like he's added some mass in his upper legs and in his core. And you're seeing that when he's able to take a bump in air and play through that contact. I think there were some drives in the last couple of games where in the past he would have gotten maybe that close to getting his shoulders past a guy and they just give him a bump and that would knock him offline. He's playing more direct now. There's some more functional strength. And I think that that's made a big difference. And like Watkins said in the preseason, is he going to make the easy plays in transition? He's doing that now. He's finishing in transition. He's finishing at the rim. The play types that he's, taking on and the types of shots he's taking are much simpler, but they're equally high value. So I think that that's what stood out to me about him is there's a KISS method to what he's doing, but he's got the functional strength to play that way now. He doesn't have to have that degree of difficulty that comes from maybe being a freshman and having a leaner body. I've liked Marcus Allen so far.
Yeah.
I think you and I are wonky in that we like him for all the weird stuff. Like we like him as an off-ball help defender. We like him when he gets switched onto posts and how he takes away strong and preferred shoulders. He just does a lot of really good stuff that you don't see freshmen do all the time. Mm-hmm. Like I think there are 3 or 4 passes in the Howard game where he recognizes the skip and he starts moving to close out before the skip is even thrown. So he's moving to the corner while the ball's in flight so he can control out and still stay down on the closeout so they can't drive him if he's high. Like, that's just good stuff. That's a freshman who's been drilled well, who plays with good fundamentals, who's seeing ball man, who's where he's supposed to be. I think you can beat him sometimes off a straight line drive, but that's always sort of been the thing. I think he's always been more of a guy who I think has functional athleticism. He's not like a freak athlete. But if he knows his matchup, I think he can sit down and usually do a pretty good job. So I've been really, really impressed with just him doing some things on defense that you don't always see freshmen do from a reliability perspective. So I think that that's been nice to see. And he's, made some good plays, when things have come his way offensively, like against Howard. They swing the ball, guys late rotating, he corner drives. That's just a good play. Guys late closing out, not under control, take the drive. Does a really good job of recognizing, when they're in a tight situation that, Tamar is forced to help defender up the lane. Just cut to the short corner. Just get to the short corner. Mm-hmm. Be hands up, be ready. Like nothing that's going to make a highlight reel, but just good, smart plays within a flow. So I think that's just what I've liked. And that he did that in high school, but you wonder how that's going to translate. It's been nice to see him just doing the simple things, the smart things, the kind of reliability things. And if he keeps that up, you'll keep playing him just because you can put him out there and know he can give Mark Mitchell a breather for a couple of minutes. And we know the team defense is going to stay strong. And we know if there's an opportunity, he's going to finish at the rim. That's not fancy. It's not going to get you on the all conference team for freshmen, but it'll make you a reliable reserve guy in that 7th or 8th spot. So I've been impressed with what he's been able to do just to handle the basics. And that's going to have value. If you keep doing that, they're going to trust you and they're going to give you more minutes when conference play gets here. So those are kind of the 3 guys that have stood out to me.
No, I agree on Aiden. I think early on there was it's interesting that Mizzou had so much success early on with Trent Pierce, and then he kind of disappeared for a couple games, and he sort of came back against Mississippi Valley. I don't pretend to know the inner workings of Dennis Gates' brain. But I do think that there's, especially in these early games and probably all the way through the next 3 games, I think what Dennis knows and what it is the same thing that we know. Like, you know who, like, what you're going to get from your top guys, Tamar, Mark, Caleb, Tony. These guys, like, we're okay. What you're really searching for is what's going to happen, like, 6 through 11, and how that is going to sort itself out
right now.
And I think there's some, trying to see what or who is going to take, possession of their role, from guys like, Warwick, guys like Jake Cruz. I think, Pierce has sort of shown through, 2 kind of up and down years that he's at least going to be fairly reliable defensively. He tends to rebound the ball in space pretty well. The thing for him is, like, if he's making shots, he's a guy that's like you're probably best putting him on the floor because, like a guy that can hit shots consistently, but he has not done that. And so, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to figure out if Cruz, if Warwick are going to be guys who are going to be able to, make those shots, are going to be reliable, they're going to be in the rotation, or if it is going to be kind of like a, merging of Trent Pierce sort of in that, like, that maybe 8th, 9th spot in the rotation.
Yeah. I think the Trent going away thing was they didn't play the freshman in that first game. And so I think they wanted to give runway to Marcus and Honor. Honor had a good game against Eastern Washington, a not so great start against, or he had a great start against Howard, not so good against Eastern Washington. Marcus had been consistent through those 2 games. And so I think Trent coming back was kind of a nice thing for them to be able to say, okay, let's give Mark kind of Mitchell a night off and let's just rotate our 4s. Let's get our 4s in. Let's get Trent. Let's get Marcus. Let's get Cruz in. Let's work it and see how this goes. I think Marcus right now, the jumper isn't what is going to put him in the same discussion there. But we just talked about all the other things he kind of does. So if you're looking to play small and fast and you're looking for guys who are rim finishers, who are going to be able to make those kinds of plays, is that how you're going to structure your lineup, knowing, okay, Marcus is going to be giving us a little bit of an upgrade defensively, and he might be able to give us some deflections and get us in transition. If Trent starts making shots, it's okay. Now we've got a small ball lineup with another spacer out there. The real wild card to me is will Cruz's jumper come around? Because I think that's why you got him out of the portal. I mean, he's 4 of 12, which isn't bad. But, he was shooting closer to 40% off the catch. That's one make difference in this game. He's got 108 offensive rating. Like, he hasn't been bad. But it's just been,
he's 4 of his last 9 attempts. So like that, I think that's probably closer to what you expect. I mean, I realize 3 of 8 is coming, but he missed his first 3. He hit 1 against Eastern Washington, and he went 3 of 8 against Mississippi Valley. I think the 4 of 9 is probably what
more
Missouri
indicative.
is, expecting him to be versus the over 3 start. I mean, it's kind of like Caleb Grill is like 10 of 21.
And I think what they did was Aiden didn't play as much on Friday because I think what they were doing is they were keeping Mark in there as their small ball 5, and they were just because they wanted to play fast and they like to get out and run. But they're like, okay, we want to cycle our 4s, but we want to keep Mark out here as our small ball 5, and that's what they were auditioning. I don't think it had anything to do with Aiden. I think it was, we want a small ball 5, and we need a reliable offensive piece. We know that's Mark. Let's just rotate guys in alongside him and see what happens and see if some guy can get a rhythm and some guy can get going. Trent didn't really get going from shooting perspective. Cruz a little bit. So I am sort of watching that. Kind of what shakes out at the 4 is who's going to be that guy that eventually can win, maybe the 10 minutes behind Mark when they need to, if they want to rest him. Who's going to be the guy that they can trust to come and do that? Is it Cruz to make shots? Is it Trent to make shots and do what you're saying and rebound out of his area pretty well and be a pretty good team defender? Or is it Marcus, who's going to be a guy that's going to defend well, but maybe be more of a cutter, rim runner, transition type rim finisher guy? So these are good problems to have when you're evaluating one of those three guys behind Mark Mitchell. But that's sort of where I think they are in that process, in that sifting process. I think they know what they have at the 5 at this point, but figuring out that 4 rotation is sort of, I think, the big thing that's on the listed to-dos for them.
Well, let's talk about what they know, what they have at the 5, because I think it's, we've seen kind of like the good, the bad of Josh Gray. He is what he is at this point. And
I'm fine
I think
with that.
Yeah, like I knew exactly what Missouri was getting. I think Missouri knew exactly what they were getting. They're honing some things with him, but the guy's been a pretty reliable big body in the SEC now for several years. He did try to rip the rim down against Mississippi Valley, but I think so far, like, you've seen what you're probably going to see. It's going to be interesting. I expect against teams like Texas A&M and teams that rebound really well. I don't know if Mississippi State is going to be that this year, but traditionally they've been a very good rebounding team. If you're going to see him playing more against like kind of those kind of squads, like Florida, another example.
Yeah.
But certainly, we've seen what we sort of expected to see from Josh. I think they've tried to kind of fit Peyton in when they can. I think they're going to probably continue to try to do that. And then I'm always a fan of going smaller and faster. So I like seeing minutes with Mark Mitchell and Aiden Shaw at the 5.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at Josh's line right now, 107 offensive rating. It's good. Nearly 29% defensive rebound rate. That's exceptionally good. Foul rate has always been pretty high for him, still pretty high. The turnover rate is up, but I'm attributing that more to what he's being asked to do than anything on him. He's never been asked to be a reader or connector in the kind of offense that Missouri runs. What I see when I see the turnovers are a guy being asked to do that for the first time.
Yeah.
Like his stat line, I look at it and I don't see anything that looks out of sorts as to what I expected from Josh. I think the question will be, how do they sort of make, their base offense work with him? Because I think that was the one takeaway that I think where the Memphis game was instructive, was he struggled, I think, to really deal with legitimate bigs pressuring him at the pinch post, at the high post, turn and read. There's a dribble pick up and he hasn't quite turned his body, so he can't see the split cut very easily. That means the ball reverses out and changes sides of the floor. He's got to maybe then go chase and do a ball screen. It kind of gets a little bit cattywampus. I think I said on Friday night, the one thing I liked about seeing Peyton out there is Peyton understands how to use that dribble to get to a half pivot to turn and make reads. Sometimes you want to see the reads out of split cuts be a little faster, but he's able to maneuver, position, get squared, keep a dribble, and, then either have his body positioned appropriately. So if a split cut is a hand flows to a down screen to a handoff, he's ready to make the handoff. There's some issues with body positioning sometimes with Josh at that spot. Missouri, I think, has found or is using a different type of entry now to get around that. I might write about that this week. And it lets them, I think, have a little bit more flexibility in what they do. And it kind of makes things easier on Josh. We'll see if that continues for them. But what was interesting is they switched to that almost immediately at Howard. They stopped running a lot of direct entry stuff and they kind of changed how they start some of their base sets. So if that works for Josh now and it continues to show some rhythm and flow, then you can keep him out there longer because you're not having to compromise your offense. You're not having to run, you're not having to do what they did at Memphis, which is just start running a lot of 5-out pick and roll stuff to get around it. So they're already making adjustments and tinkering and doing stuff. So we'll see how that goes for them. The 5 has been interesting because they've used the last 3 games to really put Mark more at that elbow, at that pinch post. And one thing I like seeing is he's sometimes just facing up and attacking, which I think is something we're kind of wanting to see from him against Memphis. Didn't quite see it. He's done that more the past couple of games. So I'll be interested if he continues to show kind of that same level of aggression, just attacking matchups early, kind of, going and getting his own at times. So we'll see at the 5 there. Aiden, it's been a little bit of a learning curve too, but he dribbled into a post up and scored on a hook shot out of one of those plays.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There we go. I liked it. It was, again, go make plays, young fella. Go make plays.
I did I only remember, one really that, like you kind of mentioned the push shot. It's one of the things that we've sort of like talked about, hoping kind of see Aiden kind of take steps forward. And one of the things that, like I just forgot the kid's name at Kansas.
KJ Adams.
KJ Adams. Thank you. Like basically seeing, Aiden kind of become a version of KJ Adams, because KJ Adams is very valuable at Kansas. He dunks a lot and he has that little push shot, and he doesn't really do a whole lot else other than, set screens and space in the dunker spot. But you know what? Like that's valuable. Like having a guy who's reliable, 10 feet and in, can set screens for you, can catch and finish dump offs. If Aiden can develop a little bit of that kind of like that mid-range push shot, I think he's and knock an occasional 3. Like he's shown he can do it. Again, like just one every couple games, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Let's make 15, 16 threes. We don't need that on like 100 attempts, but maybe maybe one attempt a game.
Yeah.
It's going to go in sometimes.
Yeah. Otherwise, if Tony, hasn't quite been healthy, they haven't disclosed what that issue is, but if he can get healthy over the next week, that would be great, because we've seen flashes from him, I think, against Howard, where if he grabs and goes, or he gets an open runway down the middle of the floor, he's going to put fouls on people, or he's going to get to the rim. He's going to apply rim pressure. That was great to see. It would be great for him to be healthy and continue to do that. We haven't quite seen him jump passing lanes with live ball turnovers yet, but I still hold out hope that if you put him and Ann on the floor together, they'll just absolutely harass the living crap out of people. Just force all kinds of turnovers galore. That's where you want a guy like Aiden getting out as a rim runner and being a lob guy. But that requires Tony to be there to give you another kind of like wraith on the ball and to pair with Ant. So we'll see if Tony can get healthy. That's the only other thing that's sort of murky at this point. But if he's just taking a week to get absolutely right, that makes sense. There was no reason to push it on Friday night, clearly. So that's the only other kind of outstanding question I have is, will he be 100% pretty soon? Because 100% version of Tony really ups the potential for what this group could be.
Yeah. So again, we're recording here at Sunday night. Mizzou not sure what happened there, but we just blipped. Currently 267 in KenPom. They are 3-2. 2 of those wins are against non-Division I opponents. They also beat San Jose State, lost to Hawaii by 10, and Northern Arizona by 3. So it looks like that 267 marker is probably pretty fair. Yeah. You do trust that their coach Dave Smart, if you don't know, is a very good basketball coach, won a lot of games in Canada. And when I say a lot of games, a lot of games.
Yeah.
Like
90%,
like,
one percentage.
would you say, like, is it fair? He's basically like the Coach K of Canada. Like, is that
That's
fair?
his nickname, is the Coach K of Canada. He is won 90% of his games and 13 national titles. That's
insane.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So, and then Arkansas Pine Bluff is after that. Yeah. Arkansas Pine Bluff 362 in KenPom. So this is going to be the Mississippi Valley State-esque. We'll probably come back after that Arkansas Pine Bluff game to sort of see where we're at after a couple more bye games. Do you have any other takeaways you want to hit on before we get out of here?
Only other minor thing is recruiting is done for the 2025 cycle. I have put away the
Davion Hannah
sheet.
Fill everybody in.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm glad I get to retire the high school spreadsheet now after Friday. Davion Hannah, guy that in early September, a lot of buzz that Missouri had sort of moved to the front of the pack for him. That buzz kind of lingered through September. And then in early October, Davion said, I'm going to go back for unofficial visits and see everyone else again. He went back to Tuscaloosa and to see Alabama, which had been a front runner for a while. Kind of fell out, once their board expanded. Well, Alabama's board contracted and he went back. Missouri kind of lingered in the picture, but over the last couple of weeks, that momentum had sort of ebbed. And then, late last week, I think, was kind of that inflection point where he decided that, rumblings were that he was going to probably look at going to Alabama. That held up this week. He committed on Friday. Missouri did sign its other two commits on Wednesday, Aaron Rowe and Nick Randall. So it's going to leave the fall with two signees. Davion Hannah is not in this class, but Missouri had been looking at 2 to 3. They had been saying all summer that 2 to 3 was going to be the number. That's where they wound up. They will go into spring looking at portal targets. They will for sure have 2 openings. They will also have 2 other scholarship slots available because the NCAA passed a bylaw expanding scholarship slots from 13 to 15. We'll see if Missouri would use those to, again, go 15 deep.
Dennis likes 15.
We haven't seen Trent Burns or T.O. Barrett yet, and we saw the walk-ons before them. So I've got questions about de facto red shirts, but
well, also, like, he was asked about it post game, and he's like, we haven't even talked about it. And it's just like, I mean, like, clearly there's been some kind of discussion. If you're looking down at the end of the bench, you're up by 70, and you're like, give me the walk-ons.
Correct. What this means here is that, yes, they have 2 slots, but the 2 spots they need to fill, there are 2. One at combo guard, which is what Hannah would have filled, and probably another one on the wing. I would imagine that a starter level option will be needed at combo guard because the only guy around is T.O. Barrett. Has yet to see the floor. Wing will probably be a little bit better. They'll have Honor Batang back, and they, depending on how you want to slot Pierce or Marcus Allen, they'll have a junior they could put at the wing spot. So I would imagine that on paper, they would just be looking for a floor spacer, a lot like Jacob Cruz probably, or a Caleb Grill, both of whom are leaving. So those are probably the needs right now, is a starter level combo guard and a floor spacing wing. You can find those in pretty good abundance come spring. So they're in a good position there. We'll see what happens with Mark Mitchell if he plays himself on to draft boards. But right now, I would say there are 2 for sure needs, potentially 3. The number of slots could go to 5 if they want to play 15. And then I'm going to stop there because I'm not even going to try and guess what churn could be elsewhere on the roster. But that's where we are in roster construction at this point. We'll get a break until
a long way away before. But don't worry, we'll be keeping our eyes on potential portal entries. Anybody who's enjoys the Trilly Discord can find all the latest rumblings, and guys who are unhappy they're not playing here or not playing there, or not happy with the role, and now they're going to enter the portal and all that kind of stuff.
The back channels will open in 6 weeks.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to get out of here. Again, we're going to try to return to regular podcasting weekly, probably next week. I think Monday's probably our most likely day, but stay tuned for that. If you are not already subscribed to Rock M Plus, hey, throw us a subscription. We have some lively discussion going on in the forums. Things are getting steadily better on the site, and I'm pretty happy with the progress we're making. And now there's like articles that are going up on rockm.plus, and currently several that you can read for free. So yeah, go check those out. So we'll be back next week. Until then, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.